I was 72 years old when my entire life fell apart. 72 years of faith, of prayers 5 times a day, of fasting during Ramadan, of total submission, and in a single night, everything I believed to be absolute truth began to crack like old glass under pressure. If you're listening to this right now, please leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. I need this story to reach other people who might be going through what I went through. Maybe you're one of them. My name is Amina. I was born into a Muslim family in Egypt, in a small town near Alexandria, where the Mediterranean breeze carried the smell of salt and fish every morning. My mother taught me to pray before I even learned to read. I remember her prayer rug, red and gold, with an intricate moss design in the center, the threads worn thin in some places from decades of use. I used to sit beside her and imitate her movements, my small hands touching the cold tile floor while she murmured prayers in Arabic. The sound of her voice was like music, something between singing and whispering, a melody that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her chest. I learned that Allah saw everything, knew everything, and that my duty was to obey. Without questioning, never question. That was the foundation of everything. My father was strict but fair. He worked at the docks, loading and unloading cargo ships that came from all over the world. His hands were rough, calloused, permanently stained with oil and dirt. But when he came home for prayer time, he would wash them carefully, meticulously, until they were as clean as they could be. "We must come before Allah pure," he would say. I watched him perform his ablutions every day, the water running over his weathered skin, and I understood that this was serious. This was life. This was everything that mattered. At 17, I married Rashid. It was an arranged marriage, as was customary. I had seen him 3 times before our wedding day. He was 23, worked as an accountant at a shipping company, and came from a respectable family. On our wedding night, I was terrified. I barely knew this man who was now my husband, but Rashid was patient. He was kind. He quoted the Quran to me, reminding me that marriage was a sacred bond, that we were each other's garments, protecting and covering one another. Over time, I grew to love him. Not the passionate, wild love you see in movies, but a deep, steady love built on shared faith and mutual respect. We had 4 children, 3 boys and a girl. Ahmed came first, then Karim, then Layla, and finally Yusuf. Each birth was difficult. Each time I thought I might die, but I would pray through the pain, reciting verses I had memorized, and somehow I survived. Somehow, the babies came into the world healthy and screaming, their tiny fists clenched, their eyes squeezed shut against the brightness of life outside the womb. I nursed them all, felt their small mouths pulling at my breast, and thanked Allah for the blessing of motherhood. Our house always smelled of cardamom and cinnamon, especially on Friday mornings when I prepared bread for the lunch after the collective prayer. I would wake up early before the sun and start kneading the dough. The rhythm was meditative: push, fold, turn, push, fold, turn. My hands moved automatically while my mind recited prayers. Sometimes I would add za'atar to the dough, sometimes sesame seeds, sometimes just salt. Rashid would leave early for the mosque, and I'd stay home with the children, making sure they were clean, properly dressed, respectful. Making sure everything was in order. Order was important, discipline was important, faith was important. My life had a rhythm that never changed. Fajr before dawn, when the world was still dark and quiet, and the call to prayer echoed through the empty streets like a ghost's voice. Dur at noon, when the sun was highest and hottest, and I would spread my prayer rug in the coolest corner of the house. Asr in the afternoon, when the light turned golden and the shadows grew long. Maghrib at sunset, when the sky blazed orange and pink and purple before fading to black. Isha at night, when the stars came out and the temperature finally dropped and I could breathe easier 5 times a day, every single day, for 50 years. I would bow, touch my forehead to the worn rug, feel the rough texture beneath my skin, smell the faint mustiness of old fabric, and repeat the same words my mother repeated, that her mother repeated, that her mother's mother repeated. It was all I knew. It was my identity. It was who I was. I wore the hijab since I was 12. At first, the fabric bothered me. It itched on my forehead on hot summer days when the temperature climbed past 100 degrees and the air felt thick enough to choke on. It made my scalp sweat. It slipped off when I moved too quickly. But over time, I got used to it. It became part of me. It was like a second skin, a protective layer between me and the world. I couldn't imagine myself without it. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who honored her faith, her family, her tradition. I saw a woman who was modest, obedient, righteous. Rashid always said I was an exemplary wife. Amina is blessed, he'd tell his friends when they gathered for tea on Thursday evenings. She's never missed a prayer, never complained, never disobeyed. She is what every Muslim woman should be. I felt proud of that, proud to be held up as an example, proud to be considered devout, proud to be obedient. My children grew up in the same faith, surrounded by the same rituals, breathing the same air of certainty and submission. I taught them everything I learned. Ahmed, the oldest, was brilliant. He memorized the entire Quran by age 15. I remember him reciting out loud in the living room, sitting cross-legged on a cushion, the holy book open in his lap, his voice rising and falling with that perfect intonation that made my heart swell. I would cry with emotion, tears streaming down my face because I was so proud, so grateful that Allah had given me a son who honored him so completely. Allah is pleased with you, I'd say, touching Ahmed's cheek. He'd smile, that quiet, humble smile that made him look so much like his father. Layla, my only daughter, was different, quieter, more internal. She wore her hijab without complaint from the time she was 10 years old, even though other girls her age were resisting, arguing with their mothers, wanting to show their hair like the Western girls they saw on television. But not Layla. She prayed with a devotion that reminded me of myself when I was young. Sometimes I would watch her from the doorway, see her kneeling on her prayer rug, her lips moving silently, her hands open in supplication, and I would think, this one understands. This one truly believes. It gave me such comfort. Karim and Yusuf were more restless. Boys are like that, I told myself, full of energy, always wanting to run and play and make noise. But even they respected prayer times. Even they fasted during Ramadan without complaint, though I could see how hard it was for them, especially Yusuf, who was only 9 when he completed his first full fast. He looked so pale by the time the sun set, so shaky when he finally ate. But he did it. He endured, and I praised him, told him how strong he was, how Allah would reward him for his sacrifice. I thought I had done everything right. I thought I was raising my children to be good Muslims, to follow the straight path, to earn their place in paradise. I thought our family was blessed, protected, secure in our faith. I thought nothing could shake us. When my children married and had their own children, my joy seemed complete. I was a grandmother to 9 grandchildren. The house was always full of children running, laughing, making a mess, tracking dirt across my clean floors, leaving sticky handprints on the walls. And I loved it. Loved the chaos, the noise, the life, especially Omar, Layla's youngest son. He was 6 years old, with huge dark eyes that seemed to see everything, always curious, always asking questions that sometimes I didn't know how to answer. Grandma, why does the moon change shape? Grandma, where do birds go when it rains? Grandma, if Allah made everything, who made Allah? That last question made me uncomfortable. We don't ask such things, I told him gently. Allah has always existed. He has no beginning and no end. We must accept this on faith. He looked at me with those big eyes, processing, thinking, and then nodded and went back to playing with his toy cars. Omar loved cars. He had dozens of them, little metal ones that he would line up in perfect rows across the living room floor, organizing them by color, by size, by some system only he understood. He would make engine noises, crash them into each other, create elaborate scenarios involving rescues and races and adventures. I would sit and watch him sometimes, marveling at his imagination, at the complexity of the worlds he created in his mind. "You're going to be an engineer someday," I told him once. He grinned at me, missing two front teeth, and said, "Maybe grandma, or maybe a race car driver." I laughed. "We'll see what Allah has planned for you, Habibi." It was Omar who changed everything. He started getting sick in the winter. It was subtle at first, just tired. More tired than usual. He didn't want to play as much. Didn't want to eat. "He's probably just fighting off a cold," Layla said, not too worried. But then came the fever. A fever that wouldn't go away no matter what medicine we gave him, no matter how many cool cloths we pressed to his burning forehead. Then, the weakness, the weight loss, his little body getting thinner and thinner, his ribs starting to show through his skin, his arms like sticks. Layla took him to the doctor. The doctor ran tests, frowned at the results, sent them to a specialist. The specialist ran more tests, and more, and more. When they finally discovered what it was, the world seemed to stop. The doctor's office was cold, sterile. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a harsh, unflattering glow. Layla sat in a plastic chair, holding Omar on her lap, even though he was really too big for that, and the doctor sat across from them with a folder full of test results and said the word we had all been dreading: leukemia, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, aggressive, advanced. The doctor said he had maybe 6 months, maybe less, maybe only 3 or 4 if the disease progressed as quickly as they feared. Layla fell into despair, complete, utter despair. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating, just sat by Omar's bedside, day and night, watching him, as if she could keep him alive through sheer force of will. Rashid tried to be strong, tried to comfort her, but I could see the fear in his eyes, the helplessness. Ahmed came to the house and prayed with us, his voice steady but his hands shaking as he held the Quran. Karim and Youssef offered to pay for treatments, any treatments, no matter the cost. But the doctors were clear. The cancer was too aggressive. Treatment might buy him a little time, but it wouldn't save him. Nothing would save him. But me? I refused to accept that. I refused to believe that Allah would take this child, this innocent, beautiful child who had done nothing wrong, who had his whole life ahead of him. I had faith. I had dedicated my entire life to Allah. 50 years of prayers, 50 years of obedience, 50 years of total, unwavering submission. Surely that counted for something. Surely He would hear me now when I needed Him most desperately. Surely He would show mercy. I started praying even more than usual. I would wake up at 3 in the morning, 2 hours before Fajr, and stay on the prayer rug, begging, pleading, bargaining. Allah, heal my grandson, please. He is just a child. He doesn't deserve this. He has done nothing to earn this suffering. Take the disease from him. Put it in me if you need to. I'm old. I've lived my life. But Omar hasn't. He's only 6. Please, please, please. My tears fell on the rug, leaving dark stains on the red fabric that never quite dried. I fasted for days on end, even outside of Ramadan, ignoring Rashid's protests that I was getting too thin, too weak. I read the Quran out loud, page after page after page, until my voice went hoarse and my throat felt like sandpaper and I could barely swallow. I made promises, wild, desperate promises. If you heal him, I'll go to Mecca again. I'll walk the entire way if I have to. I'll donate half of everything we own to the poor. I'll fast every Monday and Thursday for the rest of my life. I'll do whatever you want. Just please, please save him. But Omar only got worse. The treatments the doctors tried were brutal. Chemotherapy that made his hair fall out in clumps, left scattered on his pillow like fallen leaves. Radiation that burned his skin, left angry red marks across his small chest. He became so weak he couldn't get out of bed anymore. His skin turned pale, almost transparent, so you could see the blue veins underneath like rivers on a map. His lips cracked and bled no matter how much lip balm we applied. His eyes, those beautiful dark eyes, became dull and sunken, ringed with deep purple shadows. He stopped asking questions, stopped playing with his scars, stopped smiling. He just lay there, staring at the ceiling, sometimes whimpering softly when the pain got too bad, too overwhelming for his small body to bear. Layla spent every night beside him, lying in the narrow hospital bed, curled around his frail body, holding his small hand in hers, singing lullabies with a voice that cracked and broke on every other word. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. The American song she had learned somewhere, that she sang even though it wasn't from our culture, because Omar had always liked it, had always smiled when she sang it. But now he didn't smile. Now he just closed his eyes and breathed, each breath seeming harder than the last. I continued praying, but something started to change inside me. A subtle shift, like a foundation beginning to crack. A strange feeling like my words weren't reaching anywhere, like I was speaking into a void, into emptiness, and nothing was coming back. No comfort, no reassurance, no answer. Just silence. Heavy, oppressive silence. I would shake my head violently, trying to physically dislodge these thoughts from my mind. This is shaitan, I would tell myself. This is the devil trying to make me doubt, trying to lead me astray from the straight path. I must resist. I must have more faith. I must be stronger. So I would pray harder, longer, prostrating myself until my knees hurt so badly I could barely walk, until my back seized up and I couldn't straighten fully, until my forehead was bruised and tender from touching the rug so many times. And then came that night. The night that changed everything. The night that destroyed one life and began another. It was a Thursday. I remember, because Thursday night always had special meaning for me. It's the eve of Friday, the holy day, the day of communal prayer and gathering. I had always felt that prayers on Thursday night were particularly powerful, particularly likely to be heard. The hospital called at 7 in the evening. Layla's voice was barely recognizable, high and thin and breaking. "Mama," she said, and I knew immediately something was very wrong. "Mama, you need to come. They say it's happening. They say they say we should say goodbye." Rashid grabbed his keys. "I'll drive," he said. But I stopped him. "You go," I said. "I need to stay here. I need to pray." He looked at me like I was crazy. "Amina, our grandson is dying. You need to be there." But I shook my head. I was absolutely convinced, with a certainty that bordered on madness, that if I just prayed hard enough, if I just said the right words, if I just demonstrated enough faith, enough devotion, enough submission, Allah would intervene, would perform a miracle, would save Omar at the last possible moment. "I can do more good here," I told Rashid. "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." He left without arguing further, and I was alone. I prepared for the ablution with more care than I had ever taken in my life. The water was cold, almost freezing, because winter had settled in and our water heater wasn't working properly. But I didn't care. I washed my hands 3 times, letting the icy water run over my fingers, my palms, my wrists. I washed my face 3 times, gasping at the shock of cold against my skin. I washed my arms up to the elbows, my hair, my feet. By the time I finished, I was shivering, my teeth chattering, but I felt cleansed, purified, ready to come before Allah with my desperate petition. I dressed carefully, put on my best hijab, the white one I kept for special occasions, made of fine cotton with delicate embroidery along the edges that Layla had given me 3 years ago for my birthday. I spread my prayer rug, the same one I had used for decades, aligned it carefully toward Mecca using the compass that hung on the wall. I lit a candle because somehow it felt right, felt like it would help, even though I knew rationally that Allah didn't need candlelight to hear me. The flame danced in the draught from the window, casting shadows that jumped and flickered across the walls like living things. The house was in total silence. Silence so complete it felt like pressure against my eardrums. Silence so heavy it seemed to have weight to press down on my shoulders, my chest, making it hard to breathe. All I could hear was my own heartbeat, loud and fast, and the soft whisper of my breath. I began to pray. I recited everything I knew by heart, the surahs, the verses, the supplications I had memorized over 50 years. My voice echoed in the empty room, bouncing off the walls, coming back to me, strange and hollow. Bismillahir-Rahman-ir-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Allah, I implore you. You are Ar-Rahman, the merciful. You are Ar-Rahim, the compassionate. You are Al-Qadir, the all-powerful. You can do anything. Nothing is impossible for you. Heal my grandson. Show your mercy. Show your power. I have served you faithfully my entire life. I have never questioned you. I have never disobeyed you. I have prayed 5 times a day for 50 years. I have fasted every Ramadan. I have given to the poor. I have been modest. I have been obedient. Please, please, hear me now. Hear me and answer. I'm begging you. I stayed there for hours. The candle burned lower and lower. My forehead touched the rug and lifted, touched and lifted, over and over and over in a rhythm that became almost hypnotic. Touch the ground, rise. Touch the ground, rise. The rough fabric scraped my skin raw. My tears soaked into the rug, leaving dark patches that spread and merged. My back screamed in protest, muscles cramping, vertebrae grinding. My knees throbbed, a deep ache that radiated up into my hips and down into my shins. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Just one more time, I kept thinking. Just one more prayer. Just one more supplication. Maybe this will be the one he hears. Maybe this will be the one that changes his mind. The call to Aisha came from the mosque down the street, the muezzin's voice crackling through the loudspeakers. I joined in the prayer, my lips forming the familiar words automatically. But even as I prayed, even as I bowed and prostrated and sat back on my heels, I felt nothing. No comfort, no peace, no sense of divine presence, just emptiness. And then suddenly, I stopped. Not because I wanted to, not because I chose to, but because something inside me simply broke, shattered like glass. And for the first time in 72 years, I asked a question I had never allowed to enter my mind. A dangerous question, a blasphemous question, a question that good Muslims don't ask. Why? The word hung in the air like an accusation. Why was my grandson dying? Why were my prayers not being heard? Why did 50 years of faithful devotion mean absolutely nothing now, when it should have meant everything? Why did I have to beg and plead and bargain for something as basic, as fundamental, as the life of an innocent child? Why would a merciful God let this happen? Why would a compassionate God ignore a grandmother's desperate prayers? Why? 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 And where are you watching from right now? What city? What country? I'd really love to know, because in that moment I felt like the loneliest person in the entire universe. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a vast empty darkness, screaming into the void, and no one, absolutely no one was listening. So please, write in the comments where you're watching from. It helps me know I'm not alone. And maybe it will help you know that you're not alone either. Maybe someone else out there understands this feeling, this terrible, crushing feeling of abandonment. I sat on the floor, left my back against the cold wall, my legs stretched out in front of me. I was exhausted, more exhausted than I had ever been in my entire life. Exhausted in body, yes, but more than that. Exhausted in soul, exhausted in spirit. Like something essential inside me had been drained away, leaving only a hollow shell. I looked up at the ceiling, at the water stain in the corner that had been there for years, that Rashid kept saying he'd fix, but never did. And I whispered, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know what to believe anymore. I've done everything right, everything you asked, and it's not enough. It's never enough. If you're there, if you're really there, if you can actually hear me, please, please give me a sign. Anything. Any indication that you care, that this matters, that I matter. Because I can't take this silence anymore. I can't bear it. There was no answer, just the silence, the terrible, suffocating silence. Outside, I could hear the wind rustling through the palm trees, a dry, whispering sound. In the distance, a car passed on the street, its headlights briefly illuminating the gap under the door before fading away. Nothing else. No voice from heaven, no burning bush, no miraculous sign. Just silence and darkness and emptiness. I blew out the candle, watched the thin stream of smoke rise and dissipate, folded the prayer rug and put it away in the cupboard, my movements mechanical, automatic. Went to my bedroom, lay down on the bed fully clothed, still wearing my hijab. I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep. My mind was racing too fast, my heart beating too hard. I lay there in the darkness, staring at nothing, feeling an enormous emptiness in my chest, an emptiness I had never felt before, even in my worst moments. Like everything that made me who I was had been ripped out, torn away, and nothing remained but a void. Eventually, despite everything, exhaustion won. My eyelids grew heavy. My breathing slowed, and I drifted into something that might have been sleep. And that's when it happened. I don't know if it was a dream. I don't know if it was a vision. I don't know if I was asleep or awake or somewhere in between. I can't explain it. I've tried many times since to put it into words, and I always fail. But I'll try again now. I saw someone, a man. He was standing on the other side of my bedroom, near the window where the moonlight came through the gap in the curtains. He was dressed in white, a simple white robe that seemed to glow with its own light, a light that didn't come from the moon or from any lamp or candle, but from the fabric itself. Or maybe from him? The light surrounded him like an aura, soft and warm and golden, and it pushed back the darkness without being harsh or painful to look at. He was looking at me, not with pity, which I would have expected, not with judgment, which I would have feared, but with love. A love so pure, so complete, so overwhelming that it took my breath away. A love that seemed to see straight through me, to see every sin, every failure, every dark thought I'd ever had, and still love me anyway. A love that burned like fire and healed like water at the same time. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. My throat was closed. My tongue wouldn't move. I could only stare, paralyzed, as he moved closer. Each step was silent, but I felt it somehow, felt the air shift, felt the temperature change, felt something fundamental about reality bending around his presence. When he spoke, his voice was soft, gentle, but it had a weight to it, an authority that made my whole body tremble. It wasn't loud, but it filled the room, filled my head, filled my chest, resonated in my bones. Amina. He knew my name. He said it like he had always known it, like he had been saying it my whole life, and I just hadn't heard until now. I wanted to ask who he was, but I already knew. Somewhere deep inside, in a place beyond logic or theology or religion, I knew exactly who he was. You have been searching for me your whole life, he said, but you were looking in the wrong direction. Tears started streaming down my face, hot tears that burned tracks down my cheeks, that dripped off my chin onto my chest. I didn't understand what was happening, didn't understand why this was happening, didn't understand how this could be happening. But at the same time, I understood perfectly. I had been searching, searching for 50 years, searching for peace, for purpose, for assurance, for love. And I had never found it. Not really. Not completely. Who are you? I managed to whisper, even though I already knew the answer. He smiled. It was the kindest smile I had ever seen. I am the way, the truth, and the life, he said. I am the one you have always needed. I am the answer to every prayer you have ever prayed, even when you didn't know it was me you were praying to. And then he extended his hand toward me. I looked at it, saw marks there, scars, strange circular scars in the center of his palm, like someone had driven a spike through it, through both hands. And his feet too, I realized, the same scars, old wounds that had healed but never quite disappeared. Before I could ask about them, before I could say anything else, the light grew brighter. So bright I had to close my eyes. And when the brightness faded and I opened them again, I was awake, sitting up in bed, gasping for air, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. The room was dark, silent, empty. The moon had moved, and now the window was just a rectangle of blackness. But the feeling of his presence was still there, still lingering in the air like perfume, like incense, still wrapped around me like a blanket, still inside me, warm and bright and alive. And I knew, I don't know how I knew, but I knew with absolute certainty. That man was Jesus. I started trembling violently. This was impossible. This was haram. This was the worst kind of betrayal. I couldn't be thinking about Jesus like this. I was Muslim. I had been Muslim my entire life. My parents were Muslim. My grandparents were Muslim. My great grandparents were Muslim. I had dedicated every day of 72 years to Allah. Jesus was just a prophet, just a messenger. Important, yes, but not divine. Not God, not the Son of God. God has no son. That's what I had been taught. That's what I believed. But the feeling wouldn't go away. The love I had felt, the peace that had washed over me in those brief moments, was different from anything I had ever experienced. It was complete. It was whole. It was personal. It wasn't the distant, fearful reverence I had always felt toward Allah, that sense of an infinite, unbridgeable gap between creator and creation. This was something close, intimate, like he knew me, like he had always known me, like he loved me specifically, personally, individually, not because I had earned it, not because I deserved it, not because I had prayed enough or fasted enough or been good enough, but simply because he chose to love me. I sat there for the rest of the night, unable to move, unable to think clearly, just feeling the echo of that presence, that love reverberating through my entire being. Part of me wanted desperately to forget it, to dismiss it as a stress-induced hallucination, to go back to my comfortable, familiar faith. But another part, a part that was growing stronger with every passing minute, wanted more, wanted to understand, wanted to know if what I had experienced was real, wanted to find that man again. When the sun finally rose, painting the sky pink and orange, my phone rang. It was Rashid. His voice was flat. Dead. He's gone. he said simply. Omar died at 3:17 this morning. 3:17. I looked at the clock on my bedside table. It was now 6:30. Omar had died approximately 3 hours ago, right around the time I had the vision, right around the time Jesus appeared in my room. The funeral was 2 days later. Muslim funerals happen quickly. Omar was washed, wrapped in a white shroud, and buried before sunset the day after he died. The whole family gathered. Relatives I hadn't seen in years, friends, neighbors. The mosque was packed with people who came to pay their respects, to offer condolences, to recite prayers for the dead. Layla was inconsolable. She wailed, a high keening sound that made my heart break into 1,000 pieces. She tore at her clothes, pulled at her hijab, had to be physically restrained by her husband and her brothers. Rashid cried silently, tears running down his face into his beard, his shoulders shaking. Ahmed stood at the front and recited verses from the Quran about Allah's will, about acceptance, about submission to divine decree. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands trembling as he held the holy book. And I stood there, dry-eyed, not crying, not because I didn't feel pain. The pain was immense, crushing, almost unbearable. But I was beyond tears. Something inside me had shifted, had changed so fundamentally that I couldn't access my grief in the normal way. I was somewhere else, somewhere far away, thinking about scars on hands, thinking about a voice that called my name, thinking about love that made no sense. In the days that followed, I started searching, in secret, with tremendous fear and tremendous guilt. But I searched. I couldn't talk to anyone in my family, obviously. They would think I had lost my mind. They would be horrified. They might even report me to the religious authorities. So I went alone, moving through the streets like a spy, looking over my shoulder constantly, terrified of being seen. I passed by a Christian church near the market. I had walked by it 1,000 times before and never given it a second glance. It was small, old, with a wooden cross mounted above the door. Most of the Christians in Egypt were Copts, descendants of the ancient Egyptian church that had existed since the 1st century. They were a minority, often discriminated against, sometimes violently persecuted. I had never really thought about them before. They were just there, different, other. But now I stood in front of that church and felt my heart racing. If anyone sees me here, I thought, I'm finished. My reputation will be destroyed. My family will disown me. I might even be arrested. In Egypt, converting from Islam to Christianity is technically illegal. People have been jailed for it, killed for it in some cases. I knew the risks, but I went in anyway. The door creaked when I pushed it open. Inside, it was cool and dim. The walls were stone, very old, with paintings of saints and scenes from the Bible that I didn't recognize. There were rows of wooden benches, most of them empty. A few candles burned at the front, their flames steady in the still air. And dominating the wall behind the altar was a large crucifix. A man nailed to a cross, his head drooping, his body twisted in agony. I walked slowly down the center aisle, my footsteps echoing on the stone floor. I couldn't take my eyes off that crucifix, off the figure hanging there. I had seen crosses before, of course. You couldn't avoid them completely, even in a Muslim country. But I had never really looked at one, never really thought about what it meant. Now I looked, and I saw the nails through the hands and feet, saw the crown of thorns on the head, saw the wound in the side where a spear had pierced. And suddenly I understood. The scars I had seen in the vision, the marks on his hands and feet, they were from these. From the crucifixion, from being nailed to a cross and left to die. My legs gave out. I collapsed onto my knees right there in the middle of the aisle, and I wept. I wept like I hadn't been able to weep at Omar's funeral. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from the very center of my being. I wept for Omar. I wept for myself. I wept for all the years I had spent searching in the wrong place, crying out to a God who seemed distant and silent and unmoved by human suffering. I wept because I had found something I didn't even know I was looking for. Someone who had suffered too, someone who understood pain, someone who had died a brutal, humiliating death, and somehow, turned that death into victory. Through my tears, I whispered, Jesus, Jesus, if you're real, if you really appeared to me, if that wasn't just my imagination or my grief making me crazy, I need to know. I need to understand. I don't know how any of this works. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But if you're real, if you're really the truth, I want to know you. I need you. There was no thunder, no earthquake, no voice from heaven, no dramatic sign. But there was peace. A peace that descended on me like a warm blanket on a cold night, wrapping around me, seeping into my bones. A peace that made no logical sense given that I was kneeling on a stone floor in a Christian church, having just lost my grandson, having just turned my back on everything I had believed for 72 years. But it was there, real, undeniable. I stayed there for a long time. Eventually, I stood up, wiped my face, and left. But I came back the next day, and the day after that. Each time, I stayed a little longer. Each time, I felt a little less afraid and a little more certain that I was in the right place. On my fourth visit, there was a priest there, Father Michael. He introduced himself. An older man with white hair and a gentle lined face. He wore the traditional black robes of a Coptic priest and had a large wooden cross hanging around his neck. "Can I help you, sister?" he asked in Arabic, his voice soft. I looked at him, took a deep breath, and said the words that I knew would change everything, that would set me on a path I couldn't turn back from. "I want to know about Jesus. I want to understand. I think, I think he came to me, and I don't know what that means." Father Michael didn't look surprised, didn't look skeptical. He just nodded slowly and gestured to one of the benches. "Sit," he said. "Tell me your story." So I did. I told him everything about Omar, about my prayers, about the vision, about the scars, about the love I felt, about the emptiness of my 50 years of devotion to Allah, about how nothing had ever filled the void inside me until that moment when Jesus spoke my name. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What you experienced is called grace, unmerited favor, God reaching down to touch you not because you earned it, but because He loves you. And that love is shown most clearly in Jesus Christ, who died for you, for your sins, so that you could be reconciled to God." "But I'm Muslim," I said. "I've been Muslim my whole life. I can't just become Christian." "Can I?" "You can," he said gently. "But you need to understand what it will cost you. In this country, conversion from Islam is not taken lightly. You could lose your family, your home, your safety. You need to count the cost before you make this decision." I thought about that, thought about Rashid, my husband of 55 years, thought about my children, my grandchildren, my friends, my community, everything I knew, everything I was. Could I really walk away from all of that? But then I remembered the love I had felt, the peace, the certainty that I had finally found what I had been searching for my whole life. "I understand," I said. "I know what I might lose, but I've already lost what matters most. I've lost faith in a system that offered me nothing but rules and fear and distance. I want truth. I want life. I want Jesus." Father Michael smiled. "Then we'll begin." he said. Over the next 3 months, he taught me. We met in secret early in the mornings before most people were awake. He gave me a Bible, an Arabic translation, and told me to start with the Gospel of John. I hid it under my mattress, read it at night when Rashid was asleep, holding a flashlight under the covers like a child reading forbidden books. The words were like water to someone dying of thirst, like food to someone starving. Every sentence seemed written specifically for me, answering questions I hadn't even known I had. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. That last verse broke me. I read it over and over, tears streaming down my face. God so loved the world. God so loved me enough to send his Son, loved me enough to die for me. This was different from anything I had ever learned in Islam. This was grace. This was love. This was relationship, not just religion. I learned about Jesus' life, his miracles, his teachings, his death on the cross, and most importantly, his resurrection. The fact that he didn't stay dead, that he conquered death itself, that he rose again on the third day and appeared to hundreds of witnesses before ascending to heaven. This is why he could appear to you, Father Michael explained. He's alive, not just a dead prophet from the past. He's alive right now, seated at the right hand of the Father, interceding for us. The concept was revolutionary. In Islam, all the prophets were dead. Muhammad was dead. But Jesus was alive. I learned about grace. This was the hardest concept to grasp. My whole life, I had believed that salvation was earned through good works, through prayers, through following all the rules perfectly. But Christianity taught something completely different. Salvation was a gift, free, unmerited, undeserved. Jesus had already paid the price. There was nothing I could do to add to it or take away from it. I just had to accept it. But that doesn't make sense, I said to Father Michael one morning. Why would he do that? I don't deserve it. Nobody deserves it. Exactly, Father Michael replied, his eyes twinkling. None of us deserve it. That's the whole point. It's grace, unmerited favor. It's God's love poured out on us, not because we're good enough, but because he is good, because he loves us that much. I struggled with this. 50 years of trying to earn God's favor doesn't just go away overnight, but slowly, gradually, it began to sink in. I didn't have to earn anything. I just had to accept, just had to believe, just had to say yes to the gift God was offering. On a Tuesday morning in early spring, 3 months after my first visit to the church, Father Michael baptized me. It was done in secret, in a small chapel at the back of the church building. Only 3 other people were present, trusted members of the congregation who had converted from Islam themselves and understood the risks. I wore a simple white robe, stood in a baptismal font filled with water that felt surprisingly warm despite the cool morning air. Father Michael placed his hand on my head and said, Amina, do you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, that he died for your sins and rose again on the third day? I do, I said, my voice strong and clear. Do you renounce your former faith and commit your life to following Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? I hesitated for just a moment. This was the point of no return. Once I said these words, everything would change. There would be no going back. I do, I said. He lowered me into the water. The coolness enveloped me, covered my head, my face, my whole body. And when he lifted me back up, when I broke through the surface, gasping for air, I felt something. Something indescribable. Like 72 years of dirt and guilt and fear and shame were being washed away. Like I was being born again, coming into the world clean and new and pure. I cried and laughed at the same time. The other people there embraced me, welcomed me, called me sister. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged, not because I had earned it, not because I had followed all the rules, but because I was loved, because I was chosen, because I was His. But I knew I couldn't hide it forever. And I didn't want to. I didn't want to live a double life, pretending to be Muslim while secretly being Christian. That felt wrong, dishonest. So I made a decision. I would tell my family. I chose a Friday evening. The whole family was gathered at our house for dinner as was traditional. Ahmed and his wife, Karim and his wife, Yusuf and his wife, Layla and her husband, the grandchildren running around making noise, a normal family gathering. After we ate, after the children were sent to another room to play, I asked everyone to sit down. I had something to tell them. Rashid looked at me curiously. What is it, Amina? I took a deep breath. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. But I knew I had to do this. Had to be honest. Had to stand for the truth I had found. I've converted to Christianity, I said. I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. I believe He died for my sins and rose again. I've been baptized. I'm a Christian now. The silence that followed was absolute, complete, like all the air had been sucked out of the room. Rashid stared at me like I had suddenly started speaking a foreign language. What did you say? He asked, his voice low, dangerously calm. I've converted to Christianity. I follow Jesus now. Ahmed shot to his feet. Have you lost your mind? He shouted. Do you know what you're saying? Do you understand what this means? I understand perfectly. Layla started crying, huge, gulping sobs. Mother, how can you do this? How can you betray us like this? Especially now, after losing Omar? How can you abandon Allah? I haven't betrayed anyone, I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though I was shaking. I found the truth. I found the one I've been searching for my whole life. I found Jesus. Rashid stood up slowly, walked toward me. I could see the rage in his eyes, the disbelief, the hurt. He stopped inches from my face. You have shamed me, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but somehow more terrifying than if he had shouted. You have shamed our children. You have shamed our family name. You have become an apostate, a kafir, a traitor to everything we believe. Rashid, please. No. He cut me off with a sharp gesture. There is nothing to discuss. You have made your choice. You have chosen to follow a false god. You have chosen to believe lies over truth. And there are consequences for that. Karim tried to intervene. Father, please, let's talk about this calmly. There is nothing to talk about, Rashid roared. He turned back to me. You are no longer my wife. You are no longer part of this family. You are no longer welcome in this house. Pack your things and get out. You can't be serious, I said, even though I could see he was completely serious. I have never been more serious in my life. You have until tomorrow morning to leave. After that, if you're still here, I will call the authorities and report you. Ahmed nodded in agreement. He's right, mother. You've committed apostasy. That's a crime. You could be imprisoned. Or worse, if you care about us at all, you leave quietly and never contact us again. Layla was still crying. Please, mother, please don't do this. Just say you were wrong. Say you were confused by grief. Say you'll come back to Islam. They'll forgive you. We all will. Please. I looked at her tear-stained face, her pleading eyes. I wanted so badly to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay. But I couldn't lie. Couldn't deny what I had found. Layla, my love, I can't do that. I can't deny Jesus. He's the truth. and the truth has set me free." She let out a wail and buried her face in her husband's chest. He glared at me with pure hatred. "You're a disgrace," he spat. "Stay away from my family. Stay away from all of us." One by one they left, walked out of the house without looking back. Only Rashid remained. He stood by the door waiting for me to leave. I packed a small suitcase, a few clothes, my Bible, some photos of my children when they were young. Though I knew looking at them would only bring pain, I put on my coat, took one last look at the house I had lived in for over 50 years, the kitchen where I had cooked thousands of meals, the living room where my children had grown up, the bedroom I had shared with Rashid for more than half a century, and then I walked out into the night, into the unknown. I had nowhere to go. But I called Father Michael. He came immediately, picked me up in his old car, drove me to the church. There was a small house adjacent to the building, a simple structure with just a few rooms that the church used for guests or people in need. "You can stay here as long as you need," Father Michael said. The room they gave me was tiny, a single bed, a small table and chair, a window that looked out onto a courtyard with a few scraggly trees and a fountain that didn't work. That was it. That was everything I owned in the world now. But when I lay down on that narrow bed that first night, alone and exhausted and overwhelmed, I felt peace. It's the same peace I had felt that night when Jesus appeared to me. The same peace that had descended when I was baptized. I had lost everything. My family, my home, my place in society, everything. But I had gained Jesus, and He was enough. The first few months were the hardest. The loneliness was crushing. I would wake up in the morning and for just a moment forget where I was, forget what had happened, and then reality would crash back in and I would remember. Remember that I was 72 years old, alone, cut off from everyone I loved. My children refused all contact. I tried calling. They blocked my number. I tried writing letters. They were returned unopened. Ahmed sent me a single text message. "You are dead to us. Do not contact us again." That was it. After raising 4 children, after sacrificing everything for them, I was dead to them. Layla broke my heart the most. She had always been sensitive, tender-hearted. I knew this was killing her, but her husband was strict, controlling. He forbade her from seeing me or speaking to me. She called once, 3 weeks after I left. Called from a friend's phone so I wouldn't know it was her. "Mother," she whispered, crying, "I miss you so much, but I can't. He won't let me. Please, please just come back. Renounce this madness and come home. I can't, Layla. I love you more than you know. But I can't deny the truth. I can't deny Jesus." She sobbed. "Then I can't see you. He says if I talk to you, he'll divorce me. I'll lose my children. I'm so sorry, Mother. I'm so sorry." The line went dead. I didn't hear from her again, but the Christian community embraced me in a way I had never experienced. The church wasn't large, maybe 40 or 50 people who gathered on Sundays. Most of them were copes who had been Christian their whole lives, but there were a few converts like me, people who had given up everything to follow Jesus, people who understood what it cost. A woman named Martha took me under her wing. She was about my age, maybe a few years younger, with a kind face and gentle hands. She invited me to her house every Sunday for lunch. "You shouldn't eat alone," she insisted. Her home was small but warm, always smelling of fresh bread and herbs. She'd cook traditional Egyptian food, koshari and full madams and mashi, and we'd sit around her table with her husband and their 2 adult sons and talk about Jesus, about life, about everything. "You're very brave," she told me once. Most people your age, they wouldn't have the courage to start over, to leave everything behind. I'm not brave, I said. I'm terrified most of the time. She smiled. Bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's doing what's right despite the fear. There was a young man at the church named Marcus. He was 28, studying to be a pastor, full of energy and enthusiasm and knowledge. He started meeting with me twice a week to teach me more about Christianity, to answer my endless questions. Amina, he'd say, laughing, you ask more questions than all my seminary students combined. I have 72 years of wrong information to unlearn. I'd reply. He never got impatient, never made me feel stupid or slow. He'd pull out his Bible, flip through the pages until he found the right passage, and explain carefully, thoroughly, always pointing back to Jesus. I learned about grace. Really learned it deep in my bones. This was the hardest concept to fully grasp. For 50 years, I had operated on a system of earning. Do good works, earn favor, pray enough, fast enough, obey enough, and maybe you'll be good enough for paradise. But there was never any certainty, never any assurance. You could never know if you had done enough. But Christianity was different, completely different. Salvation wasn't earned, it was given, freely, as a gift. Jesus had already done all the work, had lived the perfect life I could never live, had died the death I deserved to die, had taken my punishment, my sin, my shame onto himself, and all I had to do was accept it, believe it, receive it. But why? I kept asking Marcus. Why would he do that? It doesn't make sense. I don't deserve it. None of us deserve it. That's exactly the point, Marcus would reply patiently. Grace is getting what we don't deserve. Mercy is not getting what we do deserve. Together they make up God's love for us. He loves us not because we are lovable, but because He is love. It's His nature. And that love was demonstrated most clearly on the cross, where Jesus died for us while we were still sinners. Not after we cleaned ourselves up, not after we got good enough, but while we were still rebelling against Him. It was revolutionary, mind-blowing, life-changing, and slowly, gradually, I began to truly understand, began to rest in that grace instead of constantly striving, began to accept that I was loved fully and completely, not because of anything I had done, but because of everything Jesus had done. It changed how I prayed. Before, prayer had been a duty, something I had to do 5 times a day, whether I felt like it or not. It was ritualistic, repetitive, distant. But now prayer became a conversation. I could talk to God like a father, could bring Him my fears, my pain, my loneliness, could be honest with Him about my struggles. And I felt heard, felt loved, felt like He was right there with me, not distant and unreachable, but close and present. I started serving at the church. Small things at first, helping to clean after services, arranging the flowers, setting up chairs, then more. Helping in the kitchen, preparing meals for church events, visiting sick members of the congregation, praying with people who were struggling. It gave me purpose. For the first time since Omar's death, I felt like my life had meaning beyond just existing. I was part of something bigger than myself, part of the body of Christ, part of a family. 1 year and 3 months after I was baptized, Layla showed up at the church. It was a Sunday morning. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes from the fellowship breakfast. Someone tapped my shoulder. I turned around. Layla stood there, still wearing her hijab, her eyes red and swollen from crying. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then she threw her arms around me and held on like she was drowning. "I've missed you so much, Mother," she sobbed into my shoulder. So much." I held her tight, tears streaming down my face. I've missed you too, my heart. Every single day. We found a quiet corner and sat down. She held my hand, squeezed it hard. Father is still furious. Ahmed too. They forbid anyone from mentioning your name. It's like you never existed. But I couldn't. I had to see you. I had to know you were okay. I'm okay, I said. I'm more than okay. I'm at peace. She looked around the church, at the cross on the wall, at the Bible on the table. I don't understand, Mother. How could you leave Islam? How could you accept this? This blasphemy? It's not blasphemy, Layla. It's truth. Jesus is real. He's alive. He loves you. He died for you. She shook her head. I can't accept that. I can't. But she looked at me, really looked at me. You seem different. Lighter somehow. Happier than I've seen you in years. Even happier than before Omar died. That's because I am happy. I found what I was searching for my whole life. I found peace. Real, lasting peace. We talked for over an hour. I didn't try to force anything on her, didn't preach or argue, just shared my story. Told her about the vision, about Jesus appearing to me, about the love I felt, about how my life had changed. When she left, she hugged me again. I still don't understand, she said, but I love you. I always will. I love you too, Layla, and I'm praying for you every day. She smiled through her tears. I know you are. That was the last time I saw her. But that one visit, that one embrace, meant everything. The years continued to pass. I stayed in that small room by the church, continued serving, learning, growing. My hair turned completely white. The lines on my face deepened. My body grew weaker, my joints stiffer, but my spirit grew stronger. More at peace, more secure in my identity as a child of God. I made new friends, found a new family in the church community, celebrated birthdays and holidays with people who weren't related by blood but were related by something deeper, by faith, by love, by the bond we shared in Christ. Sometimes I still felt the pain of losing my family, still woke up missing them, still cried when I thought about my grandchildren growing up without knowing me. The hurt never completely disappeared, probably never will, but it became bearable, became something I could carry without being crushed by it, because I had Jesus, and He was enough. I'm 75 years old now. I don't have much. My possessions fit in two small suitcases. I live in a tiny room. I have no financial security, no retirement savings, no property. By worldly standards, I'm poor. By cultural standards, I'm a failure, a woman who destroyed her family, abandoned her faith, threw away everything for foolishness. But I have peace, deep, abiding peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. I have joy, real joy that bubbles up from somewhere inside even on the hardest days. I have hope, certain hope that this life isn't all there is, that death isn't the end, that I will spend eternity with Jesus. And I have Him, Jesus, the one who appeared to me when I was at my lowest point, the one who called my name, the one who showed me love I never knew existed, the one who died for me and rose again, the one who changed absolutely everything. So please, subscribe to this channel. Click that button right now. Because every testimony shared, every story told is a seed planted. And we never know where those seeds will land. Maybe in the heart of someone who's searching like I was. Maybe in the heart of someone who's desperate like I was. Maybe in the heart of someone who's praying to a God who seems silent and it needs to hear that there's a God who speaks, who answers, who loves personally and powerfully. My name is Amina. For 50 years, I prayed 5 times a day to Allah. I fasted every Ramadan. I followed every rule. I tried so hard to be good enough, to earn salvation, to secure my place in paradise. And I failed. Because it was never about being good enough. It was never about earning anything. It was always about grace. One night, in total desperation, after 50 years of faithful devotion meant nothing when I needed it most, I prayed one last prayer. And for the first time in my entire life, I got an answer. Not the answer I expected, not the answer I thought I wanted, but the answer I needed, not from Allah, but from Jesus. And He changed everything. He still changes everything for anyone willing to seek Him, for anyone willing to let go of religion and embrace relationship, for anyone willing to stop trying to earn what can only be received as a gift. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. For 72 years, I looked for another way. I tried every other path, and they all led nowhere. But Jesus is the way, the only way, the true way, the way that leads to life. If you're searching, search for Him. If you're questioning, question honestly, and He will answer. If you're desperate, cry out to Him. He hears, He sees, He loves. May God bless you. May you find what I found. The peace that surpasses understanding, the love that never fails, the grace that is always, always sufficient. Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and the life.